Good morning, good morning, good morning. Gotta turn my head left and right before I cross the street. Gonna go. Got more than 44 pounds on the backpack. Sunny day, but cold, and I was moody. I'm smiling now because I feel better after more than 44 steps. Stretched a bit and saw the public workers coming to pick up the recycling bags. The bins. Well, there's bags in the bins, but it's mostly the bins, the green ones. And I saluted, I said thank you, and I was moody, M-O-O-D-Y, moody morning, but I gotta do the laundry, so I said I'm gonna go do the laundry. Gotta think about the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, and you know how it is on the grind. And it's a nice sunny day, so I'm gonna get some sun when I come back, right in the face, but I was just moody. I guess I was still craving a massage therapy session for years now, but hey, mayonnaise, finance the public workers who pick up the garbage, those who fill up the potholes, and public nurses, the doctors. They deserve it, earning more than yours truly, I guess. Independent artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, and theorist 24/7. Rock and roll, sports and fitness, geopolitics with yours truly, and financially stressed, My financial stress aside, whatever the case may be, you gotta watch it when you cross the street there because you gotta do the stop, So that's what it is with that rock and roll. And turn your heads left and right. In the public, we got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, and that's how we're gonna rock it, in the public with those added responsibilities, duties, and obligations. And oh, the sun's shining now. Powerful sun. Cold day. Another day. Yours truly, androgynous pansexual. Oh, I have the neurodivergence. Known as Asperger's. This is a bit narrow here. Maybe put it here like that. Because otherwise, if they come with the children, there's no space to pass in between there. But yeah, I guess we got a little bit of that rock and roll. Did I put it correctly? Oh yeah, it has to be faced this way. So we gotta double check just like the other ones. So all the other ones are faced this way. This is a mathematical thing, 7 to 15. Well, actually it's 15, I think. 7 to 17. With the sun, 7 to 17, 7 to 5. With the sun blurring, it's hard to see the numbers. Yeah, double check, 7 to 17. 17 equals 5 p.m. So yeah, I gotta double check again because the sun's shining really strongly when you look. Yeah, 7 in the morning to 17, that's 5 in the afternoon. So here I am. It was 11:44 a.m. when I started the video, always grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and got some dollars to do the laundry. Financially stressed besides that, but I feel much better. I was moody, took a shower, had a coffee, and analyzed about 2 hours of geopolitical news, meditating on them, and stretched a bit, and kind of didn't want to get out of bed in the morning, but said my friend, anonymous friend, off to work, and I stretched in bed for another hour, and I kind of said, but it's been a long time I haven't been depressed and suicidal, I conquered being depressed and suicidal years and years and years ago, and that was a hard battle. It took me a few years. A few years I was depressed and suicidal, and as far as mental health, working out, training, exercising, because I have Asperger's, HFA, high functioning autism, and this is a neurological mental condition that I live with, and there's no medication, and in my community we're less than 1%, so depression and suicidal rates can be very high, like 9 times higher than for you, the majority of the population who are neurotypicals, right? Because we see the world differently and we have trouble making friends, long-term friends. That's why for 2026, I don't will to waste nobody's time, don't waste mine. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only, You gotta be 18 plus for that play. You gotta be 18 plus for that play. 18 plus, massages, trading massages. If you're black, you're white, You're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman, you know? You're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman, or you gotta be 18 plus, or rainbow, black or white or rainbow, you know? Or a man or a woman, doesn't matter, but you just gotta be 18 plus, because I'm also part of the LGBTQ community. I've been in the open for years and years and years, as far as I can remember, eh? So that's not a problem with that rock and roll. So here I am gonna do some laundry. And we gotta. Yesterday I went for my anonymous friend. You can check out the long videos, and I got teased a bit yesterday. So, you know, I got a lot of views. I just do it for the documenting Finder's journey, discussing geopolitics, analyzing potholes, rock and rolling for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians, the plumbers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, grocery store clerks, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, the 3 workers which passed and took out the recycling, hey? To later on is garbage. So Monday you got recycling. These bins were collected by the workers in that big machines, and we need to invest in new machines. You know, it's something that we have to focus on. The North American Collective, of course, with all the geopolitical events which are transpiring. We have to focus on the integral North American Collective, protocols of SSD, my security, service, and defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. That is fundamentally where we are to be manifesting in. And, you know, we have to, of course, be related to the manifestations of our North American civilizational complex as we constitute a civilizational complex which is new and emergent, and my way to fuse Canada, United States best for a new world order based on the Imperial Republic of the 63 for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, based on my Trinity or theories as a philosopher, which I've done lots of work, hundreds of pages and documents in the past. I guess I would pinpoint in the past 7 years, especially since I predicted what's happening now. Geopolitically, I have proof for that. In 2019 October, I have the video sequence of videos where I have predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration with that, and that was just that rock and roll to spit it out, you know. And my Asperger's, well, I'm an Aspie, so that is always something which we have now to be the Asperger's position, and as an Aspie, you know, something which I will always be living as an Aspie. And of course, all that proposition that myself, my neurodivergence is not a mental illness, and of course, it's not a disease. Asperger's has to be understood from the lens of a neurological mental divergent condition, which of course predisposes one Aspie. Of course, there's variations, you know, Aspies to Aspies. There's a variation of our special interest, variation of our characteristics and traits. I wonder how much it is the rent here now, and how much. See, for example, I would calculate the rent, not that I want to move because my rent's paid for January, but just because how my brain works as an Aspie, it's always calculating mathematical proceedings. So there's always at some level mathematics involved. So I would have wanted to check the increase of the rents for the past 5 years. So for example, from 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, as we have the dimensions here, the dimensions of the different sizes of apartments, I would like to have seen how much have they increased over the past 5 years or even 6. Because in a few weeks, I will be celebrating coronavirus surviving my COVID. Hey, I had COVID. I thought I was going to die. Every day is carpe diem, you know. And carpe diem and every day, you know, is a COVID. And that's all we got now to get it on the parallel aspects of the propositions what we have now. That, of course, I live carpe diem every day, basically, as if it would be my last day. February 2020, mid-February 2020, of course, I almost died of COVID. Mid-February 2020. That was hardcore for me, and I thought I was really gonna die then, February 2020, and it lasted until March, So I thought I was gonna die, and of course, that was, of course, my surviving COVID was something which I always go back to, because having survived COVID and my volition, my will, of course, for the North American Collective is to build, of course, complementarity of the civilizational complex here where we are now. Look, we got work to do in North America. Quebec, Canada, Montreal. That could be dangerous, eh? Look how, if somebody comes fast at night and has an infant, a child could bounce back up and down if it comes. Oh, that one also. That's why we have a lot of work to do. We have to implement my DRT theory, which I discuss often, the debt refusion theory. And, I don't want to waste anybody's time, I work and I do independent work. I am an Aspiesque, I have Asperger's, and unfortunately, as my community suffers from 80% unemployment, Another one. 80% unemployment. Can you imagine that? 80% unemployment, that's functionality, a super high level of unemployment, Super high level. Super high level. Super high level of unemployment. That level, you can't contrast that. Okay, so about a week ago, maybe more, 9 days ago, in the news, there was the news that the Canadian unemployment has increased. Now, that's, of course, unfortunate. However, just contrast the 7%, close to 7% for the Canadian unemployment, close to 7%, contrast it to 80%. So in other words, mathematically, the correlation is 11 times higher. Is 11 times higher. So basically, of course, is 11 times higher. So times 11, you realize how monstrous that is. How monstrous that is. That is monstrous, a monstrous event. So being that it's 80%, if you calculate the correlation, of course, of 80% vis-a-vis 7%, you will realize how, of course, hardcore that is. How hardcore that is, That is from 7 to 80%. That's 73% more. 80 minus 7. But it also correlates 11 times. I'm laughing because I laugh at myself sometimes, I guess. I am weird and strange and awkward. Aspies, we usually are. Hey, Aspies. There's not a lot of Aspies. Not a lot of people even know what Asperger's is. We can be more straightforward and direct sometimes, and that can cause certain difficulties, in our interactions, in our interactions. And our maintaining long-term friends is problematic. So maintaining long-term friends can be problematic for Aspies. Very problematic. Because I lost most of my friends. Lost most of my jobs. And it took me years to accept it. Hey, look at that beauty. What are the angles? 80, 90 degrees? Well, 90 degrees has to be straight, right? Well, it's a quarter of the circle, right? So it has to be really like that. Those are less than 90. That one is 90, probably there in the middle, or close to 90. So of course that is what it is with that, and that is why we got that rock and roll. So that is, of course, where we are now, to be complimentary about and get it on the go. And somebody got to sing for the boys and girls in blue, Ain't nobody perfect. That includes me and you. My protocol is for policing for the 21st century. In the 21st century, policing, of course, has to be complemented in the policing aspects of the total integration, for example, because I'm pretty much, I learn more and more, but if you don't know you have Asperger's, because for years and years I didn't accept it, you can be very vulnerable, eh? My population of Asperger's, we can be very vulnerable because certain things we don't get, eh? We don't get certain things. That's why I recommend appreciating Asperger's syndrome. So there's a paradoxical condition, right? Because we might excel at some things, such as mathematics. Not all Aspies are computer science mathematics. Of course, not all Aspies are computer science mathematics. But, of course, not all Aspies are also computer science geniuses. But yes, there's a reality that there's a correlation of about, the proportion is higher. It's about 1 out of 5, which is about 20% of Aspies who are good at computer science. But if you contrast that with other populations, about 1 between you neurotypicals, which constitute the 99%ers of the population. So in your population is between 1 and 4%, 1 and 4%, so that is of course something which we have to contrast and co-equivalent mathematical statistically, right? So it's a very big difference. And there's not a lot of Aspies. Not a lot of people even know what Asperger's is. It's relatively a rare condition. It's not common, right? And so, because it's not that common, not a lot of people know. Only about 2 out of 10, I would say. 1 out of 5 maybe know what it is. Most people that I discuss, they never heard of it. It's Asperger's, no Aspie, no high functioning Asperger's. Asperger's is HFA. High functioning autism and Asperger's is one and the same. They merged in 2013, 2014, so that's just what we have to pinpoint. Of course, the relative relations of our documenting, of course, of the manners where we are now evolved to be correlative about. So, of course, all the aspects where we are now is, of course, that we have to be understanding of what Asperger's is and what Asperger's is not. So that dimension of being autistic has its levels, right? So basically, autism is a spectrum. So that's why I lost most of my jobs. Most of my jobs have been lost. Most of my relations have been, friends that I made. Well, unfortunately, they were not long term. So that's why it's always to be clear, straightforward, that either for work, or friends with benefits. That was what I would actually appreciate most, especially as it relates to my work and the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. The work, of course, related to the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, correlated, of course, of the work that is the dream for the fundamental fusion of the North American civilizational complex into the Imperial Republic based on my trinity of theories. And of course, the trinity of theories which I'm making relations with is, of course, the CIT, citizen integration theory, the DRT, debt fusion theory, the democratic fusion theory, CIT, citizen integration theory, DFT, democratic fusion theory, and the DRT, debt fusion theory, specifically for the creation of the UE. You can check hundreds of my videos, transcripts, of course, read the transcripts, get acquainted with those theories, protocols, and of course, other lectures, such as my thesis, which I presented to the world, the privilege of civilization, or the privilege of civilization. That was my thesis, which I presented in February 2023. So that one's also got it's going to be 3 years soon. I'm going to have to revise it. And all the other lectures and work relates mostly artistic work, of course. Athletic. I created my own workout training program system in 2019 to go hand in hand with a World War III scenario. Here, my only stress now is financial economics, but again, how's life in New Jersey? But one has to understand that the workplaces are mostly for neurotypicals, of which you are 99% of the population, contrasting to us, we are, right, less than 1%, only about 0.44% are officially diagnosed. And I'm part of the unofficially or semi-officially diagnosed, because since about 2015, several citizens have told me, who have experience in the healthcare system and have diagnosed me, have told me, you have Asperger's, you have autism, you're on the spectrum. That's why you see the world differently. And that's why you have these ritual routines and special interests and these mannerisms, strangeness, weirdness, awkwardness. But again, it's not evil. It's not malicious. It's not evil. It's not bad. It's just different, And we are different in the correlative aspects of how we interact with the world. So that interaction with the world is, of course, where we have to coexist together and build bridges, because building bridges is the fundamental relation of building bridges in the civilizational aspects where we have to interact. So this building of the bridges are, of course, the way to go forward. Whether we build small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges or extra large bridges. So building these bridges is of course a must, because it can be mutually beneficial. It takes sometimes patience, effort, and with Aspie sometimes you gotta be straightforward and direct. If you're not interested in the subject, don't feign, don't pretend, don't make pretense and stuff like that, Just better to be straightforward and direct with that, and straightforward and direct, and that's your best to avoid, problems with Aspies, especially with myself, as an Aspie. That's why I say friends with benefits if you're 18 plus, of course, whatever the case may be in the correlative aspects what we have now to get the domains applicated. So, see, I'll give you an example of how my Aspie brain works. Now I'm calculating, of course, the velocity. I'm trying to estimate the velocity of the cars traversing and how many and when would it be more risky here to traverse. Basically, there would be a more risk because there's a higher density population. And of course, I was looking at if there's any potholes. There's not major potholes which I can pinpoint myself now, although there might be the ones that I'm omitting not to see, not omitting not to see. So of course, all that is to say that sometimes our communications, if I would be now marching with a neurotypical and we were discussing the sentence discussion, but perhaps that neurotypical would be, wow, that's weird. And yeah, it can be weird, but it's not bad, evil, or negative, but yeah, it can be weird. We can be weird like that. And again, not all Aspies are good at computer science. We are, of course, not all computer science geniuses. But a disproportionate amount of Aspies are good at computer science. I spotted the flag, Spotted the flag. When I spotted the flag, I got spotted the flag there. I got it tatted on me, and supposedly I got that tattooed in 2003 when I graduated high school. And of course, that part of the graduating of the high school is, look at that beauty. It is in 2003, so I have a high school diploma. The problems which Aspies encounter, of course, is a high unemployment level, 80%, and high dropout rates, So, of course, the high dropout rate is very high. The high dropout rates, super high, super high. 7 times, 8 times, even 9 times higher than the neurotypicals. The dropout rate is, again, monstrous, such as the suicidal and depression rate. Now, besides really financial stress and soreness, because I live a very healthy lifestyle, I pretty much conquered, I would say, my being depressed and suicidal and all that relations where we are now, because I was depressed and suicidal, so being that I was for a few years actually. And as far as remembering my life, I've trouble remembering my life prior to 2014, early 2014, January 2014, late 2013. I'm still gonna update. I give myself a new deadline to go retrieve the archives at the Jewish General Hospital. I survived years and years and years ago a vicious surprise attack. I was hitting the head, hit my head on the concrete here in Montreal on the island of the Hawk. Hit my head on the concrete, had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, and I was bloodied up. And I went to the Jewish General Hospital and they cracked back, of course, my right arm. They cracked back my right arm. So, of course, they cracked back my right arm and they put me on some meds. So I'm curious, when was it that I went and what were those meds? Because I was put like in a cast, My right shoulder was severely dislocated and I was all bloodied up. And yeah, I survived a vicious surprise attack. It was just a vicious surprise attack. There was no sportsmanship, no nothing. And that would have been an expulsion automatically from any league. NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. For that play, I like to keep your sportsmanship, and I don't like violence. I love football, gridiron, hockey, but dancing is my favorite sport. But of course, dancing is my favorite sport, of course. But being that I love dancing, that is, of course, something which I have to state that I don't like violence at all. Actually, I am hyper vigilant. So I live with a hyper vigilance, but I do not like violence. I don't like violence at all, not one bit. I understand the use of force because geopolitics is my special interest and I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist. But of course, in the parameters where we are now, is of course to what that looks like a satellite. Well, not really, but because of how it is. And in a parallel life, I build design satellites, sats, supercomputers, sats, microchips, sats, communication satellites, antennas, satellites I launch in the sky, RCBM rockets. So basically, in other words, anything to do with science and technology in the parallel life of the year of darkness and the February 2030. That parallel timeline is 2030. So that's how we're going to get that rock and roll, because it is 2030 in that parallel life. So here I am, financially stressed, but I predicted what's happening now in 2018. I have to prove. Geopolitics is my special interest, and the problems again with Aspiesque is high unemployment, very high compared to the neurotypicals. And the other problem, which it is, of course, in comparison to the neurotypical, is the high suicidal and depression rates. Very high suicidal and depression rates. Very high. I was there, I was suicidal, depressed. Now I'm pretty much joyous, but I'm moody. I'm moody sometimes, I'm smiling and I get moody. I know I'm weird. The movement sometimes can be, bizarre, awkward, and strange. And that, of course, is the way that we are. Aspiesque is... I recommend Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome first and foremost as a great book. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is a great book, which I strongly recommend. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, super great book. After that is Teaching Asperger's Students Social Skills Through Acting, All Their Worlds the Stage. That one is okay. I still have to finish that one, but the one that I recommend the most is Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. And, sometimes it takes years, but I guess my friend tolerated me, tried to understand me so many years, and she told me that for years and years and years I have Asperger's, and only about 3.5 years ago, end of 2022, I've accepted it. That I have Asperger's, I'm different, and we have ritual routines. Me, myself, as an Aspie, but most Aspies have these ritual-like routines, and they're ritualized routines in a way that we have to have certain segmentations that we co-equivalent our time and dedication usually revolved around our special interests. So I could spend hours and hours a day, marching, which is part of my workout, dancing and exercising and doing geopolitical analysis, because geopolitics never sleeps. So that's my special interest. Has been for years, and like I said, I'm gonna keep updating on my life events, because I'm not sure. It was like a blackout before January, February 2014. Before that time, like early 2014 to late 2013 is like a blackout. So my memory, I don't know if I was a junkie, if I was doing drugs, I'm gonna keep updating. I gave a new deadline to retrieve the archives of the Jewish General Hospital. So I guess I got PTSD. I'm hyper vigilant, but not. Besides that, I'm in a good mood and I want to love and be loved. And we got a lot of work to do. We got lots of healing to do. We got a lot of potholes to repair, bridges to repair. We got a mass public private partnership for total SSD, which we need to incorporate. We have work to do in the domains where we have work to transpire and work to implement and protocols to put into place. We got protocols to put into place, and that's just what we are, to establish ourselves on Concordiate here, and in everything that we have together jointly. My way to fuse Canada best. Since 2018, I've been, of course, challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match. Ever since 2018, because Granddaddy Trump made a mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel back in 2018, and my friend got me those red gloves, auctioning them for $1 million, auctioning everything that I'm wearing for $1 million to give her half, and I kind of took some credit, of course, for credit for damaging the. Kind of have to take credit for damaging the washer. The washer, you know. I have to take some credit for damaging the washer thereof because it has been a problem, you know, to about 2/3, I guess, responsibility for that, and so I have to do it. And here I am at the laundromat. Gotta get it for the dough, and gotta get it in right here. There we go. do some change. I'm glad I came. I just pushed myself to come because I said I gotta get it done because tomorrow I got an appointment. Wednesday I got an appointment, and Thursday I got 3 appointments coming. So, since you use tokens like this, tokens. This token. Just doesn't want to take the quarter. So I took it now. One more time. Get away. I don't want to take it. It's okay, I think I have enough. I think I have enough. It's a nice place. I like coming here a lot. I'm just gonna put the money in the machine, you know. Just gonna get it going, you know. See, and it's a Swedish machine, and if you're gonna check how it goes, it's gonna go on both sides, you know. It's gonna go on both sides. It's gonna go on. Go on both sides. It's gonna start. See, this one's gonna start right now, and you were gonna notice the pattern of the spinning. This pre-wash. Sometimes it's 33 minutes. That's the thing I don't kind of fully comprehend, because sometimes it's 31 minutes, sometimes it's 33 minutes. So that's a bit perplexing, to be honest. How come it varies? The time. And this one now also. See, this one's 34 minutes. If you notice, it's gonna go one way. I closed this for the juice. Close that for the juice. Goes there. The detergent. See, goes. Now it's spinning one direction. So that direction is towards the east. This one's spinning towards the west. But as you can see, it's gonna change in a bit. See, it stops, and it goes in the opposite direction. It goes towards the west. And see, this one also now is going towards the west. You're gonna see it's gonna stop and it's gonna spin towards the east. So that's quite interesting, eh? How it's gonna spin. You're gonna see. I'm gonna see. I have to go to the washroom. I need to pee. Hello. How are you? Oh, there's no washroom? There's no washroom? Oh, here? I have to move this? Oh, here. Thank you. Now I know. I was looking for it. Thank you. I thought it was in the back because I never used it. First time. Hold it. Got it. Thank you. Pretty clean. Close the lights when you go out. Close the lights. All right. So here we are. We're going to just discuss some geopolitics. I'm going to count this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to count this one here and just make sure, because see if some coins are missing, It is $5. So that's what it is. For $5 with that Rock&Roll. And now we're going to go into some geopolitics. Now, considering that it is my special topic, you have to dismiss any other a priori, beforehand preconceptions of knowledge, of information, of wisdom that you might have in regards to the subject, that you might have in regards to the subject at hand. So first we have to begin with what is geopolitics. Geopolitics is a broad field of study, of learning, of practical application of policies, practical application of dogma, practical application of, or not necessarily practical, because it could be that a government is ruled by different philosophies and ideologies. It could be a theocracy or partly a theocratic system, such as Iranian Republic, Iranian Islamic Republic. Of course, the word republic, what we understand by republic might not be the same understanding and processing of the relations of the word republic vis-a-vis the Western mind or the Canadian American mind. That is, even within the Western sphere, the American mind might differ from the understanding of what the American republic is and has been established by the founding fathers. So when we discuss geopolitics, we have to first know that geopolitics basically encompasses all things as relates to human affairs and civilizations and nation states and countries and all the countries that are on the planet Earth in the past and that are present and perhaps will be in the future. Alliances alliances. So it could be a relation to the alliances, the nation states, vis-a-vis the organizations, the armies, and the geography plays a major role because the word geopolitics itself comes from the Greek word geos and politikos. So geos and politikos constitute, of course, a formulated etymology that it is presented to fuse the words geographic, so geographicos and politics. So from the word polity, from the Greek word, from the polity of a nation state as they were in ancient Greece, in the ancient Greek democracies and republics. And of course, in the republics of the ancient Greeks, as we had Athens and well, Sparta was a unique, more characteristics without sentimentalizing Sparta. But of course, we are not going to go into the Spartan geopolitics as it relations to their dual system and the E4 system, and whether Lycurgus was a real person or was a mythological character, Lycurgus, and whether the oracle at Pythia orated the great Virthria, but I was that priestess in ancient times, from ancient times, of course, as you believe in mysticism and occult and spirituality and reincarnations. I was myself a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, and you get that 50-50 now. So, of course, all that protruded to be in the mathematical representations and those spiritual representations when they are fused together in that complementary places that I am, of course, a believer in reincarnations and my spiritual relations and all that it concords thereof. Have a nice day. Bye bye. See you Sunday. So that is the relationships what we have now to conclude in the manners where we have the relations where we are today. So today, in today's world, the geopolitical world is way different than it was back in those days. But there are very much similarities because there's governments, there's armies, of course, sort of militia, police, and enforcement of the rule of law, whether law enforcement, whatever the law enforcement is, together, of course, done on the ground. So we have the application of force in certain manners where we have to apply force in the judicial system and the judicial processes. Myself, of course, have had some experience before a court of law, and many Aspies do. Is sometimes we're baffled as myself very much. With my neurodivergence, I'm gonna be grateful for. I had a pro bono lawyer, and it's something that these it can be problematic as that book relates to as Aspies because of unwritten social rules and regulations, social norms, unwritten social rules and norms, that certain things are not to be done in the public, and thus some Aspies like myself can appear before a court of law to recede and to make amends, to make some justice, and to repair that conduct which can be sometimes problematic. But I'm not going to go into a deep philosophical relations, but there is a correlation, as that book mentioned, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Once again, this is a great book. I recommend it to all. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and there you can see many instances of such a case and that or events in relation to Aspies and cases where, unfortunately, because of this neurodivergent, Aspies might find themselves before a court of law accused of wrongdoing, as in relation to the judicial system and the rules and the laws that govern conduct in the public. Of course, it is to be understanding that we constitute a minority of less than 1% of the population. So we are in effect a minority. So we're a minority, and this is what we are, being that we're neurodivergent. And again, the special interests that we have, we can pretty much excel in them. So mine being geopolitics, I'm going to regurgitate and do some geopolitical rock and roll. So all nation states have a certain mode of government. Whether that mode of government resembles the American mode of government, the German, the Chinese, or other countries in the world have ways of governing that are different from the Canadian model, which is, of course, up to be debated, a constitutional monarchy. As always, for years and years and years, I've been saying to my fellow Canadians, my brothers and sisters, Canadians, the king is absent. Did you know that actually Mark Carney pledged allegiance to the King of England? Mark Carney pledged allegiance to the King of England. Mark Carney pledged allegiance to the King of England. So Mark Carney pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. Now think about that. When he took the highest office of government in Canada, Mark Carney, as his predecessor did, Justin Trudeau, pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. Not to the Constitution and to the people, citizens of Canada, as I do, and always to the 63 and to all who pledge allegiance to myself and to all our youth, our elders, and all alike across the 63 for the Imperium Republic, which I call all to support as a mass public-private partnership, which is, of course, it's going to be a geopolitical reality, a new geopolitical reality where we're going to launch a true new world order for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, and building the structure for total SSD, and where we're going to, of course, incorporate afterwards the foreign policies after we have this reality on the ground by fusion of Canada and the United States in the 63 Imperial Complex and implementing my Trinity of theories, the CIT Citizen Integration Theory, DRT Debt Fusion Theory, and the DFT Democratic Fusion Theory. So now, as in relation to the realities on the ground, that and the realities of which is a geopolitical reality, is that my Uncle Carney, which I always say to my Uncle Carney, the king is absent, it's time for the Republic, and to my fellow Canadians alike, and to Granddaddy Trump, I say, well, Granddaddy Trump, you made a mistake vis-a-vis Canada, and it's, I don't know about 151, I prefer 63 to the Imperial Republic of the American Canadian Empire, right? The Imperial Republic, because the word imperium as it relates to a dominion, a nation states, and not necessarily the negative attributions of the word imperium as some politicians and philosophers and geopolitical enthusiasts espouse to relate to that word imperium, right? But nonetheless, as it relates to the realities on the ground. But nonetheless, that's a point of geopolitical analysis. The Prime Minister of Canada pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. So it shows you the realities of Canada in relations to the government structure. The government structure, right? Now here in Canada, we have a geopolitical reality, which is Quebec. Myself as a Quebecer, I always said in my past videos, as you can check hundreds of transcripts, in Quebec, we made what I call the great linguistic compromise of the North American collective, the great linguistic compromise of the French language, and it has worked so far to have maintained peace and equilibrium in Quebec, right? The great linguistic compromise, which of course has been espoused to be implemented. Of course, it takes public-private partnerships, right? Because it has formulated in accordance to many different dogmas and ideologies over the centuries, over the decades, especially in the 20th century, and as it formulates in the 21st century, but predominantly in the 20th century. And now in the 21st, as we find ourselves, that a few years ago, about 2 years ago, Justin Trudeau has, of course, financed and gave federal funding in the hundreds of millions of dollars on a long-term support of the French language. So we have to also understand that, because as we're going to merge and fuse, Quebec is going to be the French state, right? Quebec is going to be the French state. So now that we have that accorded, the principium thereof is that we made this great linguistic compromise for the maintaining the peace, structure, and stability of the Canadian Confederation. Now, my, of course, opinion vis-a-vis a geopolitical opinion is, and not just an opinion, but what I would say myself, that we should have been a republic starting at the millennium, basically. The 1st of January, the year 2000. I wonder what I was doing the year 2000. Most of my memory before January, February 2014, late 2013 comes from what I wrote in journals. I wrote in journals, my memory, but it doesn't matter. But personal memories, retrograde amnesia, which is a form of amnesia, doesn't affect skills, mathematical skills. So you might have the same mathematical skills, knowledge that you had before, the same computer skills, mathematical skills, language skills, and I'm a polyglot. I speak several languages, but it relates, of course, to the reality, of course, on the ground, is that it's just personal memory, basically, that one loses. It doesn't really matter, because thinking about that, I have a good memory of the past 11 years that is what's the most important thing, and most of my work as it relates to the present and my aspirations for the future as an androgynous pansexual Aspie who has Asperger's, and there's nothing that I can do vis-a-vis my Asperger's. I'm always going to have Asperger's. Geopolitics is always going to be my special interest, and parallel to sports and fitness and rock and roll, as I know that I have a recommendation letter from 2003 when I graduated high school that I wanted to go to Kingston Military College, and I never went, I guess, because of this neurodivergence. I dropped out of college and what have you. I did graduate high school, so I do have a high school diploma. So I do have a high school diploma myself. I graduated high school. Many Aspies drop out of high school, higher education, college, and universities. Many Aspies drop out of college, universities, and high school. So many Aspies drop out of high school, colleges, and universities. But I did not. I did graduate high school. So, and as it relates to the work that I did in geopolitics, it's mostly primarily related to the North American Collective. Well, the North American Collective, or the North American Collective Civilizational Complex, the North American Collective Civilizational Complex, which includes Mexico, includes Haiti, and Jamaica. The Dominican Republic is also included, right? The Dominican Republic is also included, as well as Haiti, Jamaica. Cuba is a paradox because Cuba is still a national socialist state, right? So Cuba is one of those countries which, of course, is a paradox that it is part of the North American civilizational complex, Cuba. But they're socialist communist in their appellations. They're still a one-party state. So Cuba is a very, very complex, rather sometimes not necessarily that it is a complex in its understanding, but because there's a simplicity that they kept their one-party socialist communist state Cuba as a system of governance of Cuba, the socialist republic, right? So, but nonetheless, Cuba, in the paradox, it is part of the North American civilizational complex of North America, as, of course, is Mexico. It goes all the way down to Mexico. It includes the island, Jamaica, Haiti, Bahamas, the islands of Bahamas, and Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba. They're included in what I call the North American collective civilizational complex, Mexico as well. But fundamentally, as we're speaking about the further fusion, primarily it's going to be Canada, United States, or the Imperial Republican complex. So I'm going to go into an event in my life back in 2019. So we're going to go back in October 2019, where I guess it's kind of started my conclusion after a deep intellectual, academic, philosophical, geopolitical analysis. It started, of course, I concluded basically that humanity is set again towards a course, towards a direction of an international conflagration, and so that course, that direction towards an international conflagration is due to several factors, but one principal factor was that there were unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, specifically during the Cold War period, which lasted about almost 45. Some people say more than 45. Some people say 46. I don't mind expanding it, but I do say that it lasted between March 1947 and December 1991. So March 1947, or February 1947, March 1947, till end of 1991, December, that is about more or less almost 45 years, right? Almost 45 years. So because it lasted almost 45 years. Some say 40, more than 45, 45 and a half, or 46. I don't mind expanding it. So I don't necessarily mind expanding it to more. What I do object is, of course, saying less. Right. So less. So if you're going to say that it lasted less, then, of course, I will object to. But, of course, it lasted around 45 years, more or less. So that is where we have to begin, because I have proof for that, when we discuss the geopolitical reality of 2026, January 19th, today, January 19th, 2026, and what is to be expected perhaps for the future, and how do we deal with the world as it is now, in parallel to my prediction having become reality. A World War III, an international conflagration having become a reality in many ways. It parallels my prediction. Now, not every detail by detail by detail, but of course, consequently and paradoxically, as I have been Emma will call for the construction of the mass 44 buildings, tunnel structures in case of a thermonuclear war as a mass public-private partnership, we have to consequently, of course, be and do and think and do because it takes action. So building, as for years and years and years, you can check my transcripts. I have been advocating for the construction building of 44 mass underground city tunnel structures in case of a thermonuclear war. So, of course, you have to say that we have to build 44 mass tunnel city structures underground in case of a thermonuclear war, and that proposition is, of course, something which we have, of course, to do as a mass public-private partnership in case of a thermonuclear war. Now, it relates to the Greenland situation. Maybe a semi-compromise can be made, and a joint NATO North American collective. We can build 11 tunnels there, 22 in the US or 22 in Canada, 11 in the US, and that could be complementary. Or we can build several tunnel cities in Greenland and accord a certain percentage of the population of NATO complex, of which we are a part of members, accord, of course, the evacuation of citizens in case of a thermonuclear war. So, of course, all that has to also be correlated and related thereof, of course, to where we discuss Greenland, because it has become a point of contention. And Greenland is, of course, officially part of Denmark, a Danish territory, right? Greenland is, of course, a part of a Danish territory. So, of course, that appellation is a reality which we have to confluence ourselves with of today, because it seems that there's several escalations vis-a-vis this reality of Greenland. So, of course, all that to say it is that this compromise and this coming New World Order, which we're going to primarily establish by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican complex, because the king is absent. And my way to fuse Canada and the United States best into the Imperial Republican complex is a mass public-private partnership, as I invite all to support the great work, especially the implementation of the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Debt Refusion Theory, DFT, which will include many projects, but especially by implementing the DRT, the Debt Refusion Theory, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. Will have, of course, to be relatively, of course, to espouse ourselves and to continue this fusion and this continuance of the North American collective, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, vis-a-vis the plurality and the structure of the world as it is today, and as it has fragmented vis-a-vis and after, of course, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, furthermore, the escalation in the Middle East, Israel, Palestine, Hamas, and those are all conflicts which have reignited, just as one of my main predictions was, of the reason, the motive of a coming international conflagration in October 19 over a World War III, if you will, World War III, was that many unresolved conflicts, many conflicts were unresolved from the 20th century during the Cold War period. And if you see the pinpoint of course, of this Cold War period, which lasted a long time, you see that Ukraine and Russia were both part of the Soviet Union, as Moldova was, and other countries, other nation states, of course, were. And of course, in the complementary, of course, of also Transnistria. Transnistria now is a geopolitical that's a fascinating geopolitical reality. Transnistria is an unrecognized quasi-state. They actually even have the statues of Lenin and ancient statues, of course, which were carved, ancient statues during the Soviet period dedicated to Soviet socialist commissars and Bolshevik revolution leaders. They still have the statues of Lenin and other communist leaders in Transnistria. And they actually still have their passport, and their flag still has the hammer and the sickle. The Soviet hammer and the sickle, the main symbol of the Soviet Union, the star, the red is my favorite color, but the hammer and the sickle is still part of the Soviet Union. Was part of the Soviet Union, and the hammer and the sickle is right there. The hammer and the sickle is on the flag of Transnistria, believe it or not. You can check. That's another interesting paradoxical reality of the world. Transnistria is a quasi-unrecognized state. It borders between Russia, Ukraine, and Moldova. So it's upwards towards Ukraine, basically between Ukraine and Moldova. Moldova was part of the socialist Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union, the USSR, United Socialist Soviet Republics, the official title. USSR, United Socialist Soviet Republics. So that has to be that's quite fascinating. And if you study geopolitics, the question of Transnistria is, I guess, a more of a paradox. And many people who go there, they kind of feel like they're going back to the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s Soviet Union times, the Cold War period, which ended in December 1991. Oh, ready to unload. That's ready to unload. So we got it. With some work, with some struggle, we got it. It's only in the backpack, one of it. The other one's ready now, see? It says wait, door is locked. Oops, black socks. Yeah, black socks. Auctioning these black socks for $1 million. Gotta spin it, make sure that nothing got stuck in it, you know. Gotta spin that one also, make sure, you know. Okay, everything's good to go. Now they're heavier though, you know. I didn't use the white ones again. I used only the black ones now because it's not worth it to spread them all up. Because I decided to put them in. Yeah. So guys, to my place is gonna be a workout coming here. Now they're heavier, eh? I wonder what's the percentage. See, this is the thing with Aspie brains. I wonder now mathematically, because they're a bit wet, because I'm gonna dry them at home. What is the? Is that the dryer works at home? The dryer works at home. So, what is the? Gonna put the chair back. Just gotta be mindful, you know, to put it back. All right. Oh yeah. It's gonna be a road trip. It's gonna be, yeah, they're heavier now, way heavier. But I wonder by how much percentage. I never used this one. This one is Speed Queen. This one is $2.50. $2. That's $2. That's $3. So we have $2 ones, $3 ones. I use the 3 and the 4 best. That's $3. It's a good wash and dry. Just make sure that I didn't do anything. Excuse me? This one's $2?
Yes.
This one's $2, eh? Thank you. Oh yeah, this one maybe, I never used that one. I always use these ones. It was $3 and $2. Hey, that's, I guess if I only have some things, I guess maybe some things can be used there. Well, that's good. I didn't even know they had $2 ones. But man, did they change? Yeah, I think they changed since a month ago. So they might be new on those $2 ones. Oh, they took the $2.25. They were $2.25. So they took the $2.25 and the $3 ones. And they added the $3 ones and they added $2 ones. So in between. Anyways, now I'm wondering how much. So I spent 3 and 4. 3 and 4, 7. 7. If I would have went to another place, I would have spent maybe 10. 10, right? I think now it's starting to snow a bit. So I wonder how much, by how much in percentage, look at that, how much in percentage, by how much in percentage, look at those potholes, man. Got a lot of work to do. By how much in percentage are my bags heavier? Okay, to estimate, I would say that anywhere between 13.4% to 25.44%. 13.3 or 13.4%. Let's say 13.4. 13.3 goes. 13.3% to 25.44% heavier than when I came initially, because now they're wet. Now they're wet, but not that wet because this has a good spin cycle. But I'm drying them at home, so yeah. So I spent $7, and I wish I could give my anonymous friend $1 million. Me and Donald Trump are gonna fight it on the U.S. border, and we're gonna build the 4 together. Now I will to discuss the 4 buildings which we're gonna build together, which is the Imperial People's Coliseum, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the House of the Dragon, and the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community and fellow Aspiesque community as well. Some part of both, and it's always God bless, Goddess kiss, the coming of our Imperial Republic. God bless, Goddess kiss, the coming of our Imperial Republic. You know, it's God bless, Goddess GODDSS kiss. And you know how it is. Always God bless God. Goddess kiss, vice versa sometimes, you know. You gotta rock and roll double trouble with the goddess. But yeah, this is a beautiful color here. I just love it. And I take 2/3 responsibility for damaging the washer at my home, you know. 2/3 about, because, you know, I think I did it. Pretty much. So I wish I could give my anonymous friend a washer and a dryer in a house, you know, in a house. So let's fight me and Donald Trump. I've been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match since 2018, since he imposed Granddaddy Trump, he imposed tariffs on Canada. But paradoxically, we also have to understand that Donald Trump and the administration has opened doors for us to be united with the Union. What's called in American political history, culture, philosophy, admission to the Union, because originally there were 13 states. 13, right? 37 states were added. Some as recently as in the 20th century, in the 50s, Hawaii, Alaska, Hawaii, that A and H, right? So you also have to understand the problem is it's not 51. So Canada, we're 10 and 3, right? 13, basically. I could go for 11. Turn the 3 Northwest Territories into a state. The Northwest Territories, Yukon. Northwest Territories and Yukon. Northwest Territories and Yukon. And the other one. So the Northwest Territories, Yukon, and of course we have the Nunavut. Nunavut, Yukon, Northwest Territories. Northwest Territories, Yukon, Nunavut, right? They could be one state, but preferably 13, you know. 13. Preferably 13. And inconsequential to that, that is not one, right? But in theory, one would go, I guess. One will, in theory, maybe also work. Well, I prefer a few many because we got the French state. So at least two. The French state here, Quebec, which are going to have different constitutions, but 63 best for constitutions. And my way to fuse Canada and United States best, because this merger, fusion, will require a new constitution. It will require mass public-private partnerships to rebuild the aqueducts, the roads, the aqueducts, the sewers, the canals, the aqueducts, the sewers, and we're going to get that implementation to secure it coast to coast, ocean to ocean, based on my theories, philosophy, some strategies I cannot overly discuss, some strategies I cannot overly discuss. But of course, those strategies which I cannot overly discuss are part, of course, of the strategies such as the total mobile defense theory system. Hey, looks. This is what the satellites in the 50s and 60s, cube, rectangular, look like. That's what it is with that. And that's how I gotta get that rock and roll in for my aunties. I applied the 4 steps to the left, 4 steps to the right protocol, right? So basically what I did is I took 4 steps to the right so I can get out of their way so they can safely proceed in advancing as they were heading towards the east, as I'm heading towards the west now. If you don't know what I'm referring about, you can check in my past videos. Basically, when I see senior citizens and the fact that I'm bulky and I have all these apparels on me, the laundry and my trajectory, and to Asperger sometimes there's a little bit of that clumsy. So I basically implemented the public security protocol for myself as an individual to just take 4 little steps in this case it was to my right side or the direction towards the north, because my right hand is facing north. I'm marching towards the sun, the west now, and maybe we're gonna take a little south here. East, west, north, south. So the total mobile defense theory, gotta salute our firefighters. When you hear the sirens of the firefighters, of the police, of the ambulance, do the full circle citizen, imperial citizen security protocol. Turn 180 degrees to the left, 180 degrees to the right. Do it maybe 3 times. Make sure everything's secured. Everybody's secured. When you hear the sirens, ambulances, firefighters, we love our firefighters. We love our butchers. We love our bakers. We love our nurses. We love our pediatricians. We love our Aspiesque. We love our homos. We love our lesbians. We love it more in the center, eh? Not too extreme, left and right. And some mass public private partnership, some caring, some less selfish. I don't make pretense that I'm totally selfless or without lust. Or, I could use a massage therapy session, but I guess I'm gonna keep hoping for friends with benefits. Maybe starting today, things will improve. I'm keeping fit and action is required, and implementing my total mobile defense theory, TMDT, when it's in parentheses, when it's an S, it becomes a system. I cannot totally discuss it fully, because discussing it fully is going to require, of course, me discussing it with Pig Hegseth and Chiefs Directors and Tulsi Gabbard and David McGinty and others to discuss. Of course, the total mobile defense theory will enable me to do it, but I can't discuss it over much because it's by national security sensitive, and that by national security sensitiveness is going to require a little bit of rock and roll with that, and that rock and roll is going to be in the done with high-ranking security generals of Canada, United States, and heads of the RCMP, FBI. My way to fuse FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, is parallel to the RCMP. We're going to fuse it into the Imperial Police Service, the IPS. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to implement my DRT. And we're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI into the IPS, Imperial Police Service, and we're going to fuse CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and that's how we're going to fuse, of course, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. We're going to fuse it with the CIA into the Imperial Security Intelligence Service, the Imperial Security Intelligence Services, the Imperial Security Intelligence Services, the CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, which was formulated, of course, implemented June 21st, 1984. Our co-equivalent in many ways of the CIA, just like our RCMP is co-equivalent in many ways like the FBI. And we're going to have to do a census best. If they don't have criminal convictions, if they stole a bread or cheese, things like that, nobody's perfect, it happens. But if you have 44 convictions, we're not going to accord the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act. We're going to, of course, implement the Imperial Dracula Protocol. The Imperial Dracula Protocol best, of course, the compromitter where we are now to be relevated. And, we got potholes to fix. So that is part of the spark of the dream. And fusing the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, with the FBI, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations. We're going to do a great census when we're going to fuse Canada and the United States. We're going to create the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, based on my DRT. So this is applied geopolitics, because applying my theories, the DRT, debt through fusion theory, the DFT, democratic fusion theory, and the CIT will require the implementation thereof of these solvents, their solutions, their solutions with that. So the CIT, citizen integration theory, the DRT, debt through fusion theory, and the DFT, democratic fusion theory, will enable us to move towards this concordiate, and it will require my astrological brother Bill Gates. You're basically a mass public-private partnership. My Scorpio brother Bill Gates and of BlackRock and Blackstone, and my RBC, and of course all institutions and organizations, and here at Hydro-Quebec, we're gonna build more dams, we're gonna rebuild the infrastructure, rebuild the roads, rebuild the bridges. We got a lot of work to do in that. So that is just what we have, of course, to do in the correlative aspects, what we have now, but that is just, of course, the domains where we are to be correlated in all the realms of the North American Collective, which, of course, encompasses the public and the private in a mass public-private partnership, which we're going to do. We're going to fuse and going to get rid of the border, do a census, and again, accord citizenship to all who've been living here, let's say 7 years. 7 years, we can accord this new citizenship as we're going to merge into the Imperial American Canadian Empire, the USSS, I guess, Imperial United States of America, Imperial United States of America, because fusing with Canada, this is going to establish a new reality, and the USA is gonna strengthen Canada, and Canada we're gonna strengthen the new USA with our ways, coalesce. The king is absent. Time for the Republic, the king and his heirs, unless they want to become citizens, and maybe fill some potholes. Then maybe we can put them to some work, I guess, because we got work to do. And my fellow Quebecers, that's not a problem for my fellow Quebecers, because here we still have the question of a referendum, and the geopolitical reality is that my Uncle Legault, I call him Uncle Legault, has of course, Uncle Legault, I have to inspect, he of course is no longer Prime Minister. He of course left the position, and of course he quit. He used to very much quit. He quit. I like going towards the sun like that. It's just so nice and kind of beating on that go, and that's what it is, for that, and that's just what we're gonna doing, So he basically left his position on ago. He quit and he resigned. And we're gonna see what's gonna happen. But see, look at those potholes there. Horrible potholes. Wow. Got some potholes, got some work to do. We got bridges to fix, Bridges to fix. Potholes, Potholes, bridges, and we got work to do, and I'm all about work, as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and philosopher and thinker and piece of dust, Sometimes I gotta say that so many things I don't know, like construction workers. Gotta salute the construction workers on those cranes, Hydro-Quebec workers. They know their business, they know their work. Public workers who built in the past all the roads, all the infrastructure of both Canada and the United States, the highways, the Trans-Canadian, St. Lawrence, I gotta give a shout out to the ones who built the St. Lawrence Seaway. It goes all the way to the Great Lakes. It took started about 50 years ago, and of course I concorded with philosophies and theories for total North American land, sea, and air, total SSD, security, service, and defense, land, sea, and air, total SSD, land, sea, and air protocols, and that's just what we are and what we do with a total SSD, security, service, and defense, and the construct which we're going to appellate and which we're going to do ourselves, of course, which is fuse the RCMP, FBI into the IPS, Imperial Police Service, implement my DRT, the Death Row Fusion Theory, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, and the DFT, Democratic Fusion Theory, the DFT, which is going to formulate according to the values of this Aspiesque for myself and for the others, for the individual, and we're going to create the Dragon Army. The Dragon Army, of course, we're going to create it, the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, Security Service and Defense Legion, and the Dancing Goddess. Look at that beauty. Isn't that just darkly beautiful? Like the goddess's hair kisses by the trees. Gotta salute the truckers. Love to the truckers, the firefighters, and the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, the welders, the electricians, the plumbers, doing some plumbing, the bakers doing some baking, with that, and that's how it is, and that's how we gotta get down that rock and roll, always for the 10, the 50 and the 3 for the youth, the children, the motto of the empire, the children are innocent. The children are innocent. That's the motto of the empire of the 63. Let it rise and let it be. The children are innocent. Can I implement my DRT theory, Death Row Fusion Theory? We're gonna create the UE, Universal Exchange Unit. If you hear the sirens, our brothers and sisters, boys and girls in blue, and get out of the way, slow down. Your $1 million car is not that important. With our fellow citizens and all who come to join us lives. And do the 180. You hear the sirens of the police, or the firefighters, or the ambulances. You turn your heads 180 degrees to the right, 180 degrees to the left, 180 degrees to the left, 180 degrees to the right, right? To do the full circle imperial citizen protocol, establishing the security and concordance thereof, as it has been formulated since many years, and many of my principles positions have been developed, especially since 2019. And I gotta give a shout out to the firefighters, bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, warehouse workers, construction workers, and all involved in the production, distribution of food. And I got to record an event in my life, what I call the Imperial Citizen Security intervention, the Imperial Independent, the ICSI, Independent Citizen Security Intervention. In 2016, I get goosebumps when I discuss it, and this has to be formulated into Imperial Republic for total SSD, Security Service and Defense. In 2016, I found here in Montreal in a freely distributed newspaper, I found propaganda on behalf of the Islamic State, which for years and years and years had terrorized Western countries by terrorist activities. Look at that pothole gotta be fixed. Yeah, that's what these ones, potholes here I'm concerned, where especially that one's bigger than those ones there. If somebody comes faster at night if they're driving with a child. Look at that one. That one's so deep. Yeah, that one's problematic. You can go with the wheel like, and the child can bounce their head and can hurt the head. You can hurt their heads, so that is what it is with that. And there's another pothole. This one is problematic. If somebody comes fast from there, that one's a monster. Monster. So we got a lot of work to do via my DRT. The debt refusion theory is going to enable us to do so. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory, is going to enable us to, of course, do all that work, the aforementioned work, which I said. So back to what I was saying in the consequential prudence, and of course the consequential realities of me having done in 2016 and others, compared to what I call the Independent Citizen Security Intervention. So in 2016 here in Montreal, I found in a freely distributed newspaper, I get goosebumps whenever I discuss it, I found an article in a newspaper, about a 4-page article, which was basically Islamic State propaganda. And they had declared themselves a caliphate at that point in time. In 2016, they were now recognized as the caliphate, representing all Muslims. They were not recognized as such. And there was a 9/11/2014, Obama had declared the intervention by many nation states in Syria and Iraq because they conquered vast swaths of Iraq, right? Like almost half of Iraq, they had managed to conquer and fuse, absorb in their caliphate. So this terror group, somebody on behalf of this terror group, I don't know how, to this day, I don't know how it got published, how it passed the editors. How come our police services missed it? How come CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, missed it, which is co-equivalent with the CIA, kind of, CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, which I did some cooperation with in the past. And of course, this propaganda was calling on citizens to pledge allegiance, as is their MO, modus operandi, to pledge allegiance and attack us, strike us. So I prevented tens of deaths, maybe hundreds. I for sure presented a mass casualty event. I take great pride in that action. I didn't even hesitate. I took the article in question right away to the RCMP. Of course, I took it right away to the RCMP. And I, of course, formulated the protocols, of course, for the implementation thereof. Of course, of the strategies where we got now to be suffused in all our dimensions. And, of course, that strategy is the Imperial Citizen Integrated. Well, it's actually an Imperial Citizen Security Initiatives, the ICSI, which we have to formulate and encourage people to support, of course, the Independent Citizen Security Initiative, right? Which I did myself years and years ago, 2016, without any hesitation. I marched right away with the article in hand. I took 3 newspapers, 3 copies, and I went to the RCMP and I did the Independent Citizen Security report, and after days and weeks and months after, I didn't see the propaganda on behalf of the Islamic State being published, and even that newspaper disappeared. So maybe their license got revoked, and I'm pretty sure, confirmed, that of course I helped people, of course, to save citizens' lives, maybe even hundreds, because if it would have been read more, if people would have taken it and they would have done as that propaganda piece was calling people to do, to pledge allegiance and strike, to attack us, basically to attack Canadians, Montrealers, Canadians, North Americans. I get goosebumps whenever I discuss that. So that's maybe what I was saved and I didn't die there where I used to live before summer 2014 in that moldy place. I used to live in a moldy place, very small underground space. I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm glad I have one now. I discussed it often in my past videos. I didn't even have a bathtub. It was like a prison cell. It wasn't really a prison cell, but it was like one. It was a small space, not a big pothole there. We got work to do. My DRT will enable us to do the work. Consequently, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE. So we're gonna, of course, have to implement the DRT. I'm gonna quickly explain it. We're gonna take all the public and the private debt. My $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the public and the private debt. We're going to convert it into US dollars. We're going to add it with the public private debt. And we're going to create a new central bank with all the money in circulation. So my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, also integrates in it monetary integration theory, which monetary integration theory is, of course, the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory, we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all that money, we're going to suffuse it in and integrate it and create the new currency called the UE, U.Universal, E.Exchange UE, or the Imperial dollar. So basically we're going to fuse the Bank of Canada with the Federal Reserve of the United States. Do a great census, mass finance fitness, mass finance the infrastructure rehabilitation projects, mass finance the Imperial rehabilitation projects, mass finance the Imperial rehabilitation projects, mass finance the building of the Golden Dome, a total SSD plateau, security, service, and defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to formulate that, and we're going to, of course, mass finance citizens' fitness, mass finance the building thereof of the strategies and the implementation of the DRT, debt refusion theory. We're going to create this new currency, and that will enable us to create the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the international, that is the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, Security, Service, and Defense Legion, and the Dragon Army for SSD based on my principles, and infuse the mobilization of 1% citizens, and the Dancing Goddess Army. This could be problematic also. The Imperial Integrated Dance League, to dance for environmental education and action. Pledge your allegiance, legions. Let our empire rise and be for the 63. Pledge your allegiance, legions. Thou art family.